Welcome to our third episode of CARICOM Competition Commission, our celebration of 15 years of regional competition and consumer protection in the Caribbean single market economy. Our expert today is none other than Mr. David G. Miller. Mr. David Miller has held the position of Executive Director of the Fair Trading Commission in Jamaica since November of 2008. His responsibilities include the investigation and evaluation of evidence regarding anti-competitive business practices, which have a negative impact on the proper functioning of markets. His functions also include making appropriate recommendations to the commissioners and the portfolio ministers. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Mr. Miller. And Mr. Miller, we are extremely grateful that you were able to get some time to sit in with us as we partake in this question and answer episode. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here in this interview. Firstly, let me congratulate the CARICOM Competition Commission on its 15 years of service to the region. It's been a challenging 15 years, I know, but there has been many positive outcomes from the work of the CARICOM Competition Commission, and we here in Jamaica will continue to support the work of the CCC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for your kind words and your commitment to working with us. The JFTC is actually the oldest fair trading commission in the Caribbean region. Can you tell us what are some of the benefits of having a national fair trade commission like yours to the Jamaican economy?
Well, this year, interestingly, marks 30 years of competition legislation in Jamaica, 30 years of operations of the Fair Trading Commission here in Jamaica. And we have had a steady but improved reach on the Jamaican consumer and on Jamaican businesses in particular. Now, generally, it has been demonstrated that effective competition law and policy contribute positively to economic growth. It will start from that perspective, and that is where the FTC was born and founded on that platform. We needed economic growth at the time in Jamaica in 1993. We were looking at various options and looking externally, in particular, on more mature jurisdiction. And that is where the decision was made that we need competition policy and law in Jamaica. And competition legislation seeks to protect markets from anti-competitive practices. And therefore, having a legislative and operational framework tells the world that you're serious about having competitive markets, that you're serious about expanding local business and making it reach internationally. We no longer operate in an economy within Jamaica. We operate in a global market. And the policymakers from back in 1990 to 1993 until the legislation was formed, they saw that, and that is where Jamaica needed to go. To create a system where businesses may compete on a level playing field, whether they're publicly traded firms, private firms, or government firms that participate in the market. So for Jamaica in particular, we created an operational framework and we built it over time. It was not perfect in the first 5-10 years, I might say, and it's been a constant work in progress. So we built this operational framework that investigates conduct pursuant to the competition legislation here in Jamaica. It's called the Fair Competition Act. And we have a responsibility to assess market conditions, to assess harm to competition and to consumers, to identify barriers to entry and expansion, and encourage growth by firms in the marketplace. And notably and importantly, we here at the FTC in Jamaica, we use best practices. No need to reinvent the wheel. There are over 100 jurisdictions that have a competition framework in their countries, and there are sufficient precedents in most markets. And our interaction with other competition agencies has helped us to develop and to grow. There's a common saying that we have here in the office, and if there's a conduct that we identify here in Jamaica that could be in breach of the law, let us look somewhere else, because more than likely it has happened in another country. So let's see what has taken place in other countries, and let's see how they treated with it and apply it to the Jamaican context of that conduct. And it's important that we're able to do that. And in order to do that, we must build relationships with other jurisdictions. At the end of the day, we have to limit the likelihood of harmful conduct to business and to consumers. We have to limit the concentration of markets that could lead to collusion or monopoly-like effects. Also, another thing that the legislative framework does, it provides legal certainty to transactions such as mergers and acquisitions. So a firm understands that there's an established process for us to assess a merger and acquisition, and we follow that line in a transparent manner, keeping the interaction between those firms open and straightforward, so that they are aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, the tools that we use to assess the market, and come up with our conclusions. So it gives legal certainty to what they're doing, and not only for mergers and acquisitions, in other types of investigations also. When you have a law and you have transparent internal processes and procedures, and you rely on jurisprudence and established reports that has been done, and business entities will say, yes, the FTC is operating in a certain manner, rather predictable. Let's see what the outcome is, and that builds a strong relationship between us. Another point of note, let's give you some numbers from the Jamaica Fair Trading Commission. From 1993 up until now, we have had about 8,100 cases or complaints or investigations that we have resolved in the 30 years. And let's just split it into two sections, the first 15 years and the next 15 years. In the first 15 years, we had 6,200 investigations. But in the next 15 years, it's down significantly to 1,900. And there's several factors. There's several reasons why there's a reduction. Partly because of effective enforcement on the part of the FTC and the work we're doing to build a competition culture among the firms in the marketplace. Another reason is a strengthened legislation. Another reason is sharpening our investigative tools and advocacy initiatives, dealing with policymakers to engage them in a manner that they consider competition issues when developing policies and legislation. And that has resulted in a trending down of the numbers, because at the end of the day, more business enterprises, more policymakers understand policy law. It was very difficult in the first 10 to 15 years for us to get the message out and to meet with the policymakers, to meet with the business enterprises, to let them understand what competition law and policy is about. And one of the things we found is that firms do not necessarily complain or come to us until or unless they have a problem or they feel the effects of competition. And sometimes they're not even sure why this is happening in the marketplace. And they come to us, and we have to engage them and demonstrate to them what it is going on and the benefit for understanding competition law. So it's been a challenging time for the firms over the years, but I think we're at the place where most of the developed and established firms understand what we are about. And our interventions over the years in different markets has helped us to grow and has helped our market to mature substantially. The several key sectors, you mentioned some of them in your introduction. Petroleum and energy are big in Jamaica at a time when there was some amount of government control and the whole systems were relaxed. to allow more competition and more firms participating. Construction, similarly, the banking sector through commercial banking, we have intervened in that sector as well to demonstrate the benefits of competition and to effect change that benefits not only the market players, but consumers as well. And when investors, primarily international investors, recognize that there is a competition law, there is an agency that is real and handling issues, they are more ready to come and invest in Jamaica. And we've seen that in the grocery sector. We've seen that in the airport services and airline sector. We have seen in the telecommunications. I mean, our history in telecommunications is replete with instances of one firm, which was changed in the 1990s, and the government issued another license and opened it up with the recommendations of the Fair Trading Commission in Jamaica, and telecoms just exploded in Jamaica over the next 10 years between about 2000 and 2010, adding value to consumers' benefits, adding value to firms, in particular when the telecoms firms now evolved into more data services than call services. And in the next 10 years, 2010 to 2020, we've seen a lot more focus on demonstrating value to consumers, including business enterprises, through these technological changes in telecoms, which allows all these mobile services at the fingertips. So in a nutshell, I think the Jamaica FTC, without being unbiased, has benefited Jamaica tremendously. There's been great value for having competition legislation and competition law being practiced here in Jamaica, and the benefits are being seen in other member states as well, so long as they listen and learn from some of our weaknesses and errors along the way. I think it's much better for the region to have competition legislation in place. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for such a detailed response. And I was really impressed with how you created that bridge between the Fair Trade Commission's work and how that is seen in regard to economic growth, how that is seen in regard to investors' confidence and value to consumers. I think that was very interesting. But also you touched on an area where you spoke about the increased numbers of investigative scenarios being brought to the Fair Trading Commission. And it actually sets the tone for the second question. What are some of the key challenges that you face, particularly in investigations and enforcement of competition law?
Well, we will start with the legislation, and we're a statutory body. Everything that we do is based on the law and how it is drafted. Now, challenges, there have been many challenges over the years. It's not been an easy road. It's not been a smooth road. It's been a long way of learning along the way. But at the center of any competition enforcement must be a sound piece of legislation. And that's one of the areas that has been challenging for us. When our Fair Competition Act was tested, it exposed certain weaknesses in different areas. Certain weaknesses, the staff internally and the commissioners internally recognized the weaknesses. And in two matters in the first 10 years of the FTC, we were challenged by other firms in the courts, and the gaps were exposed. And of course, in the Jamaican system, and I suspect in other member state systems, judicial systems, amendments take time. Amendments to change the law takes time. There has to be internal discussions, has to be understood, and then the legislative process can take time. So that's one of the challenges, main challenges that we have had over the years, addressing some of the weaknesses and gaps in our legislation, not being able to take on every case in the way that we ought to take them on. But the good thing about it is that we have identified these weaknesses and gaps, and we know how to use our tools to work through these gaps to get the outcomes that we need to get to effect change for the better for the market. Another challenge, and you talk about enforcement. We must have good staff. Human resources, I mean, to most organizations, is the hub for everything. And in the area of competition law and policy, it's a distinct area because it's an interplay between law and economics. And usually us here in the Caribbean, we're exposed when we study either law or economics as a discipline or a profession. But competition law requires that you understand and are able to use both of them. So we have to build a knowledge base, and we've had to do that over time so that we follow these best practices and we understand what we're doing when we're applying specific tools to the work that we're doing. It is a steep learning curve, but we've managed to get good people to be committed to the work that we do. And in so doing, over time, we build institutional memory. Yes, there's sufficient jurisprudence out there from other countries and all that, but you want to have your local bank of information, of knowledge, of knowing what you did 4 years ago, avoiding the same mistakes or the same weaknesses and addressing them as you go along. So you have to build, we've had to build our staff. We were fortunate enough to receive assistance and technical capacity building assistance from first the USAID and then the IDB between the years 2001 to 2010, where we had access to international consultants who came and gave us face-to-face teaching, classroom. And many of us sat in the classroom and learned as we went along and to understand how to deal with cases. And we've had to build internal systems to preserve that learning for continuity as we go along. Another challenge that we've faced is the judiciary. In the first 10 years, as I said, we went to court and we lost in 2 cases. And yes, there were weaknesses and gaps in our legislation, but at the same time, we recognized that the judiciary didn't fully understand competition law and what it was about and the significance of economics and how the market operates and studying the market operates. We were not convinced that the judiciary fully understood that. And we stepped out and decided to host some sensitization sessions from members of the judiciary with the assistance of the IDB, I must add, where we got some international practitioners over a period of time in different areas to come to Jamaica and have these sensitization workshops with the judiciary. So that has been a challenge. We're not seeing in the last 10 years, we have not had as much challenges when we carry our cases to court because the members of the judiciary are more aware now of that interplay between competition, between economics and law in making their decisions. And so that is another challenge in enforcement. Indirectly, building a competition culture in Jamaica. That affects enforcement in a way because sometimes you're not able to do as much as you would want to with a particular case because the business participants just don't realize that what they're doing is anti-competitive. Sometimes they're not sure, they're not aware that their conduct is really anti-competitive and in breach of the law. So we had to build that over time with the private sector organization of Jamaica, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the law firms. We've had to have one-on-one meetings and workshops with them to engage them in a manner that they can understand that we are here to guide them in instances. We are here to provide guidance, not only to hold a big stick over their head, but to work with them for the best outcome. And I always say, the business people, they know their business more than us in the office of the FTC does. We're just lawyers and economists here sitting in an office shuffling paper and examining things based on theories. But the business people, they know their business. So we rely on them and we build that relationship with them for them to explain to us what their business is like, for us to in turn respond to them and demonstrate to them what they're doing may be harmful, because at the end of the day, I don't really believe anybody wants to break the law deliberately. They want to comply. So that makes the discussions a lot easier and the conversations a lot more understandable when you take it from that perspective. But all the challenges together, the law, the building technical capacity internally, building staff capacity, building that database of knowledge here electronically as well as in humans, building the competition culture, since that in the judiciary, all the factors work hand in hand. It's not one particular challenge. If you fix it, that everything is gonna flow easily or flow in the correct way. It's kind of like making a cake. You need all the ingredients to come together with the right portions to bake that cake and make it the best cake that is tasty. And it's a work in progress as well. It's never perfect in our world, but you learn from your challenges, you learn from your mistakes, you develop and try to do better, you learn from others outside so that you get the right set of ingredients for that cake at the end of the day for the particular case. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for those kind words and wisdom as well that you've shared with us. And